Hey guys, welcome to the IHTHT podcast. Today I have with me a good friend of the show, good friends in general, Blair from the When I Grow Up podcast is where you might know her from. And also she's doing a new thing in Atlanta called God's Image. She's running up the Atlanta branch. And so she came by to talk about that, but also just about how that whole process of taking on God's image has impacted her life, and a little bit of follow-up on the previous episode that we did about postpartum depression. So if you guys haven't listened to that, I would go check it out, come back, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Do I need to get close or no? That's good.
Yeah, as long as you're consistently away from the mic. Yeah. You know what's funny? It's only a podcaster that would ask those kind of questions.
Oh, for real?
Because I don't think anyone ever really asks about. They ask about like, is there anything I need to know? But like the question of like, how do the sounds look and stuff like that? Like, yeah, nobody really asks that. But how are you, Blair?
I'm good. How have you been?
I've been great.
Yeah.
I have been really tired. We were 2 weeks ago was our church retreat. This past weekend was Thanksgiving.
That's right.
So
I did see a picture or something somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shoko Springs in Alabama. If you're
Oh, did you like that place?
It's nice because they do everything for you, like food and like
Shoko Springs. Mm-hmm. We went to somewhere over the summer that did it's like a Southern Baptist convention place. Mm-hmm. But I think David looked into Shoko Springs before. It is
a little bit on the pricier side.
Yeah.
But I think for our situation, it was totally worth it because we ended up having like 16 kids. So we needed childcare.
I love it.
Yeah. So like there's plenty of space for like a separate room for the kids to kind of like do their stuff while the adults are in service and doing small group and stuff like that.
So you had childcare?
Every session we had a rotation of 2 parents and the 2 youth group students who came. Actually 3 youth group students. Yeah, 3 girls from youth group, 2 parents, and then some of the pastor's wife and some of the other parents would kind of go in and out.
Okay.
But that was plenty.
Nice.
We had plenty of activities for them to do and stuff like that.
Oh, like someone planned the I'm just so curious. Someone planned the activities?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a full-on program, but for every session there was hey, let's decorate and make this crown.
Okay,
let's do this.
Okay.
Yeah. But then, we had like toys and blocks kind of all over the place, so they were just kind of running around doing stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so great. I love that. I love that. I mean, I was just talking to someone the other day about like that we're like you and I are the grown-ups now. And then it's like it's just crazy.
Yeah, youth group feels like yesterday.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And now it's like it's wild to me because like I have Nunas and Hyungs whose kids are now in youth group. You know what I mean?
That is wild.
Yeah.
Super wild. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming, Blair.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. This is cool because in this space, in this house, I think the first episode I recorded in this place was with you.
Was it?
Yeah. It was like
honored.
Back then it was like right when we had moved in. Like my wall of like immature comic book toys and stuff like that wasn't even all there. Yeah.
But it was developing, and I walked in just now and was like, "Whoa,
yeah,
Eli would love this."
Yeah. But yeah, I wanted to. We've been trying to do this for a while, and the kind of main thing I wanted to talk to you about today was you're doing a new thing.
I am.
And I got to go see what it was at. What was it? Was it a concert? Or
we called it a concert.
Yeah.
It's called God's Image, and it was a concert. Thanks for coming, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
It meant a lot to me to like see you and other people there that not that I wasn't thinking about, but just thought, I have no idea what's going to happen at this particular concert, and I was just so grateful, like so grateful, and felt so encouraged and blessed by my friends who just like showed up. I would argue. I'm sure you showed up for me, right?
Yeah, of
Like you
course.
should, yeah. So
Yeah.
like, it was. I knew it was because I'm like, I didn't even explain what this thing is. They just showed up for me and David, and it was really great.
Yeah.
It was really great. Yeah.
And I will say this, going into it, all I really knew of God's image was, oh, it's just body worship. And they go and they learn how to dance.
Right.
And like kind of being there, and then the founder of God's image was there.
That's right.
And her explaining kind of what motivated her and what was the catalyst of it forming, and like kind of some of the policies and stuff like that. I was like, wow, that's like, there's a lot of thought behind it. It's not just simply, oh, let's get together and dance.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted specifically to have the conversation with you, because it would be a shame. It would be a shame. It would be sorry. I'm so tired. But it would it would be yeah, it would be so 아까워. Sorry for using Korean. It would be 아까워 for people to just think, oh, this thing's just about dance, without really understanding the fullness of
No,
what it
I
is.
hear you. And to be honest, I feel like when I shared with you and Shirley at the very beginning, I didn't even know how to explain it to you. And I also knew like God's image was something you have to like witness in order to really know what it is. And the sentiment that you just shared with me, like not knowing what it was until you went to the concert and participated and heard what the founder had to say, is shared by mostly everyone that was there. And by the grace of God, everyone left with a different perspective, and for that, I totally resonate with the people that was like, yeah, I'm just showing up because Blair asked me to be here. But again, grateful for the change in perspective that was a realization that, oh, this is more than just dancing, right? And I knew that, and David and I knew that, and but again, it was like because okay, just gonna go into my soapbox just a little bit, but like
please.
because you and Pastor Stephen Kim talked about this on your most recent podcast. That was, which by the way, congratulations for just the rebooting.
Thank you.
But like just the whole idea that just kind of culturally in Asian American culture and like church culture and Korean immigrant church culture is always kind of like a decade behind, and that's okay. But because of that, it was just, again, another element that I felt like, yeah, I don't know how to explain it to you, but it's happening everywhere else. But it's time for Atlanta to like be there, is how I felt.
Right.
Yeah.
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 And I think not just the heart and like the program of God's image that like impressed me. It's not just those things, but it was after so the day after the concert, you had kind of open house where parents got to come and stuff. We didn't get to go to that. We had a previous engagement, but I talked to a couple of people. So Aisley's classmates,
That's right.
their parents, like they went and they were telling us some of the things that like you told them, and I was like, oh wow, like that adds, like even the policies of like what like that's in place. I was like, oh, that's really awesome. Like that adds to the whole like entity of God's image, And so, yeah, if you don't mind kind of diving into those things as well, not just
What did I say?
well, like one of the things was you guys are very intentional about and this sounds, I think this is great as a parent, like intentional about not allowing like dating within.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is like for a student's perspective, it might be like, oh, that's so like lame. Why not, right? But if you like are really trying to be God honoring and steward the time of body worship well, it makes sense to say explicitly like, hey, we're not gonna do this. because that's not why we're here. You know, like even things like that. Those policies, I think, are like add to like the real intentional like heart of what God's image is, and it's not just something that's because there are certain things that just kind of slap on the God name and say, oh, this is for God, but you kind of look under the hood and it's a little bit like, well, it actually just works like any other thing that's out there. You know, you just slapped on the name. And so it was like really cool to see that. Oh, this and something that the founder said during the concert night was she doesn't allow any scouting from like K-pop companies, which like if you understand K-pop, how they kind of like grow in Korea, they actually do a lot of scouting at like church retreats and like revivals and stuff like that. So for her to intentionally say no, like we're not gonna, like that again adds to, oh, like these people are really serious about what they're doing and their heart behind it, you know. Yeah, so from wherever you want to start, if you want to kind of, and I know that's like a easy thing to do.
Let's see.
Also, is it if it's kind of hot, I can open the window.
Oh no, I'm okay. I'm okay. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay.
For the listeners, my house, like my room, my office gets really hot because of the heater. So that's
yeah,
what
no,
that's
I'm
about.
okay. I'm comfortable.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Such a gracious host. Where do I start? Well, okay, for those of you that don't know, God's Image is it's not a ministry, it's not a dance company, but it's a nonprofit organization that the workings and structure of it work like a ministry model. It is a tuition-based organization, and there's reasons for that as well that I can get into too. But the heart of it is to equip the next generation in worship through dancing and the performing arts. And those of you that know, you know, my heart has always been to cultivate, to encourage young people towards going after the things that they love and are passionate about, and doing it in a way that, you know, if you are a Christ follower, to steward that well, to reflect who God is to you, right? And so hence, you know, my efforts in like starting the When I Grow Up podcast and like really encouraging my friends to share their stories so that other people could latch onto something and really be either inspired, motivated, equipped, resourced, so that they can go after the things that they love, right? And so, and particularly, I mean, what ended up happening is, I think I do have a lot of engineering friends that are Asian American. Many people in my own families, they're engineers. I did have doctors and PAs and nurse practitioners on. I did want to try to avoid those careers just because I wanted people to know there is more than what maybe our immigrant families influenced us or told us that this is what we're supposed to do, right? But I don't dismiss, you know, people's like giftings in being technical and logical and the way that their mind works. My own son and is very logical that I'm learning, right? And I see as a parent, I'm like, you should be an engineer, you know? So you can't help it, and I get it. But the point of the podcast was to just encourage people that even if your parents told you should be an engineer, but you feel like you should be a dancer, there are ways to be dancer, you know, and do it for to make a living, to be happy, to live in the calling that God has created you to live in, right? But I've learned a lot, even just from my podcasting days. And as I'm extroverting my thoughts to you, I'm even having my own revelation right now. But
wait, quick question, because you're talking about it in the past tense. Are you saying like
when I grow up?
Is it kind of done?
No, it's not. David, my husband, would be so like, it's not done. No, it's not. It's just on pause. Just my capacity to take on things. But I was actually inspired because after you like relaunched episodes, I went to my Spotify and looked at your feed. I was like, oh my gosh, he's been doing Bible readings.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, why not? Like, so good. You're so great, David. But no, I'm not I say past tense just because it is on pause, and I have not been like consistently like seeking out guests or anything like that. But yeah, so all that to say, I think with God's image, and what I described it to be, it does align with a lot of what I'm passionate about, right? Like equipping the next generation. If you've listened to my first podcast episode with David, with you, my background is in figure skating and the performing arts and television and film. And so a lot of it aligns, and I love worship. Like, and my husband is a worship pastor, and I think I really do come alive in my relationship with the Lord through worship. And particularly, I do like dancing. I'm not a dancer, but I do like it. And so for many years, actually, David, my husband, his family has a lot of ties to God's Image, and God's Image started 35 years ago in Los Angeles with just 12 students, and now they have branches worldwide. They just launched in Australia over the weekend. Yeah, it's crazy. And God is just really using this ministry, this organization to raise up like worshipers from kindergarten through 12th grade, right? And then you're seeing leadership kind of stem out of these things and out of this equipping in a way that's really unique. And I've gotten to witness some of it through just other students from other branches and my time spent with the team that came to Atlanta too. But anyway, so yeah, David asked me to like, let's think about doing this. And he's more logical. I'm all heart. And even though maybe it would make sense, I just could not connect. Because like, I never had my own experience with God's Image. So I didn't really get it either. From the outside, it made a lot of sense. But I was like, I just have no conviction. And when I don't have that conviction, it's really hard for me to like, be passionate, but then also like mobilize people, towards something that like I'm starting, right? Or we're starting. And so summer 2024, was it last year? Yeah. It's really odd how it came about, like the conviction.
So summer 2023, right?
Oh yeah, 2023.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
2024 right now. 2023. So Eli, my oldest son, went to a camp at Perimeter Church, which is a church here in, where is that? Duluth? Peachtree Corners? Anyways, they attended a camp there, summer camp, and it's wonderful. Like, it's so good. It's so well run. It's like 30 years old. And I say that because they've got it together, right? And it's a very large mega church. And as a children's pastor, when I attend these things, I can't help myself. Your brain just like starts thinking about all of the possibilities and what can you use at your own ministry from this situation. And so on the last day of the camp, they have like an assembly, they call it. And so it's just basically just a worship service with all the kids and the students, and they show you like the week's like highlights through a video. Okay. But this assembly, I don't know how to describe it, but like it was like just a bunch of kids worshiping, and then teachers like that are the counselors are like college students, like just like going crazy worshiping with a lot of like body motions and stuff. But for whatever, the presence of the Lord was there. Like I was very emotional, and I kept thinking, this is amazing. And like, I know what was taught during the camp because Eli would tell me every day what he learned and what they did. And they would also like send home material and lessons and stuff. And so just everything, I just really enjoyed it. But the assembly on its own, right? Like, they're so tired. It's like a 10-week camp. Okay. And then like, I just went for 1 week, but these counselors are so exhausted, but they just looked sold out for the cause. And I love things like that, David. Like I'm a UGA fan because I went to Georgia, which we shouldn't talk about the game this weekend, but
It was a good game. Yeah.
it was an okay game. But I'm a Georgia fan because I graduated there. But I love sports because people like are in it together and they are like for one thing. And they like are passionate about it, right? And so some of them will die for it. You know, like it's just crazy to think about. And that's why I love being a Christian too, honestly. Like when we band together for something and then like can mobilize people towards a goal, I just think it's so beautiful. And so that's what was happening at this camp, right? Like with these counselors. My church guys, my teachers, like they honestly are amazing. Like I attend a small church, but like the team that I get to serve with, like they go above and beyond. However, I thought, how much more can they be equipped here at this white American camp? And they get paid. And so I was like, why don't I just send my teachers here for a summer and they get resourced and then like, you know, they can tell me everything they learned. And then I just felt in my heart like mad. I was like, why, how long will the Caucasian mega church equip the immigrant church? Does that look like will this look forever the same here in Georgia? And then I was like so annoyed. And I was like, I mean, our kids are getting older. Like Eli's 8 this year. Wow. Isn't that like, you know, like time is just flying by. And so I was like, okay, so what does that mean? Like we need a camp. So the camp's called Camp All American. So I was like, in my head, I was like, so we need like a Camp All Asian American? Like, what is that? You know, like, and then I was like, okay, hypothetically, if we did this, right, like together as a like a region, like what would that look like because the camp is like starts at kindergarten and goes through 12th grade, or I don't even know if it goes that high. I think it might go through middle school or something. But anyways, so like just a VBS on steroids, right. Okay? And so I started like thinking in my head at the assembly, like while I'm watching this, like, okay, so like say we decide to do this and I like band everyone together and where would we do this? And then again, I don't want people to like read into this too much. It's not a huge deal, but okay, say we do it like at a larger piece of property. One of the larger Korean immigrant churches here in Atlanta, whatever that is. I don't know what it is. Not by numbers, but just like by property space, right? But then it would become like that church's thing. Right. Right. And it's not going to be a regional thing. Let's be honest, you know, like, and then that annoyed me. And I was like, okay. And I was like, so then what? Like, how, and you and I grew up here, or like for the most part, right? And like, you came later, right?
Oh, yeah, a little bit, like middle school.
Okay, right. Okay. Well, say it's pretty much the same, but, and we talk about you and I talk about this all the time, like same things over and over again. And we try, not without good intention, of course, and I feel like heart is always in the right place, but for whatever reason, nothing sustains, like in the sense of like regional stuff. Right. So just annoyance again, and asking God, okay, then what do we do?
Right.
Like for Eli and Zoe, what do we do? And then it wasn't the voice, or it was just a feeling, and I just thought, I think it's God's image. And then, like this whoosh of like regret of me even going down this process like came over me, because I was like, I'm not doing God's image here. That's crazy. Like I'm not, like, because whenever you commit to something like that, right? I mean, you are giving up something else. And so I'm like, no, I'm already doing a lot of things. Like, I'm not doing that. And this was like a Friday, okay, in the weekday. I went home and I thought about it some more, and I was like, that's crazy. Because at this point, I know one thing for sure. God's image is every Saturday. So that means like I have to give up my Saturdays, right? And like, I know it sounds silly to talk about now, but in that moment, I was like, no, I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not gonna give up my entire. I just got them back, my Saturdays. Like, and then like just the investment into people, and then like parents, and I was like, I'm not doing it. And so,
what did you mean you got it back? Like you were doing something else?
Well, I think like it goes into kind of like my last episode with you too, right? Of like just my postpartum and really feeling healthy with my children and with my family and my church, and like I just felt free again, right? And so I just felt like, okay, like I just need a minute. Like, anyways, I took the weekend to really think about it and pray about it, and within like 3 days, God gave me a lot of confirmation, which was very difficult and challenging. It was funny, like so I took all day Friday, all day Saturday, and then to pray about things. And then Sunday at church, we actually had a guest speaker that Sunday, and it was a missionary from Nicaragua, right? And the whole like the point of the sermon was like, how do you know like a decision that you make is like a God decision, right? And I'm like, why is this the message today? Like, but basically, I mean, he was very like, he's a full-time missionary, him and his family. He has like grown children that are like in high school, and he was basically saying like the one that requires the most sacrifice and like death to self is probably the choice that God wants you to make. And it's a hard pill to swallow. But then literally I'm like weeping by myself as he's talking and saying these words, and I'm like, okay, like I know exactly what it is then, right? And so but in that moment I remember I said, all right, like if our family decides to commit to this, I told God, like, God, you have to do everything. Like, I can't do it. So you have to do everything. And yeah, like that's the, like, if you don't do it, I can't do it. And so literally after we made our decision, doors just started flinging open, just wide open. And by faith, our family just continued to walk through those doors until they would get shut, but they haven't yet. And man, I will say, I've been telling people the same thing, so if you've heard it already, I'm sorry, but I think it's like kind of embarrassing to share, but I'll just share it because it's the I hope you hear this podcast. I like control, and I like being perfect. Ministry structure works for me, and things like children's ministry and VBS and retreats and church programs, like I'm really good at them. And I know what I'm doing most of the time. And church structure, honestly, is like kind of predictable too. And so like to say I do those things like fully abandoned and trusting in God and not my own ability, like I would be lying. Right? Like I trust in my ability to do like to execute a VBS well.
Right.
But I think at like 36 this could be the first time in my life that I've fully like am fully trusting and surrendering and living by faith for God.
That's great.
It's amazing, actually. Like it's like the most freedom I've felt in a while. Like in a while, yeah. Like
Sorry, just to kind of ground what we're talking about here. When you talk about when you said you asked God to do everything,
yeah.
I guess that includes like finding a location,
Yes.
finding teachers.
Yeah, finding teachers, finding location, people attending, like even actually having the first conversation with the founders in LA. I initially thought maybe it's a closed door because I think it's public knowledge, so I think it's okay. But like the founder fell ill, like just very suddenly, and she's perfectly fine now by God's grace. But like that was like when I went to LA over the summer, and then I was gonna like talk to her, but it fell through. Like, and so we just didn't meet. But then I went one more time in October because of 2023 because my sister-in-law was getting married. And then they happened to be at the wedding because my sister-in-law is really involved in God's Image in Los Angeles. And then we talked, and then the husband team of the founder team, sorry, the husband of the team, you know what I mean, right? Okay. He was like, oh, you should pray about it. But the 사모님, the wife, was like, obviously they prayed about it, like let's talk. And so like so we talked in October 2023. God opened the door. They said, let's do it. And according to them, I don't know all the facts, but according to them, there have been people in Atlanta that have tried to do God's Image, but just doors just were not opening, and it wasn't happening for them. So they just gave up. I didn't know this, but then I said, okay, well then if the door closes, it closes, and if it doesn't, we'll just keep going. And so that's what I mean. So even from that point on, again, people just have been helping me out. I don't have to say anything sometimes, and they're just like, hey, like, do you need a space, or do you need this, or do you need help with admin? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, and a lot of things too. Like, I think even just our age, right? Or like even our season of life, right? Like it's mostly like my friends that are doing it. Like I don't think it would have worked 10 years ago, you know? I think timing, I think the fact that we are in a TikTok generation and dancing is once again cool. And there's a lot of interest in that.
Yeah. You know, funny side story is, so, I mean, me, John, you, and we meet like every Wednesday. So we hang out a lot. And like he's been looking into like getting this like big van. And so like we're talking about that a lot. And like he's like going back and forth, which one is he going to do and all that. And he finally like, Lydia agreed. And so like he finally pulled the trigger and bought one. And that night would have been one of the first nights where like we're in the same place. So me and Shirley were like, hey, like did you bring the van? Can you show us the van? And he was like, oh, God's image is using it. So even that, it's like, in my head I was like, oh, perfect timing for God's image, because like you like just got this van.
No, yeah, absolutely. Even that was perfect. Like my taekwondo dojang, they actually let me use their van.
Oh wow.
Their bus for free.
Wow.
Yeah, Master Jung's taekwondo. So things like that, just like open doors. But with that being said, I think even my attitude towards asking for help has been different too, because I think if it were my thing, I would feel very like self-conscious, or like very like, I don't really want to ask for their help.
Right.
But for like truly, I'm like, well, this is God's thing. I'm just advertising what God wants. So like, hey, can I borrow your van for God's image? And like, if they say no, I'm like, well, okay, like
Right.
I guess God doesn't want me to use that van. And I just move on. And it's really great. It's really awesome. Yeah.
Has that translated to any other parts of your life?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think church and people like relate a lot of things.
Yeah.
But this like goes like, we're not even talking about God's image anymore, but like this goes even into like when I first arrived here tonight to talk to you, you asked me like some things that we should talk about, and I was explaining to you that I didn't listen to my latest podcast episode with you because it was hard to listen to, I feel like, because it was on my postpartum and just such a difficult and challenging time and season of me and my family's life. And but when I finally understood, right, like the reason for that time in that season, and how, I mean, truly just God brought me out of it. And then when I was like processing, like I would even argue when I came to do the episode with you, I don't think I was fully healed, like, and restored. And like, I think there was still a lot of like residual stuff that I was still processing on my own. But the imagery that I think God gave me during that time that helped a lot was like, I'm not even sure if I shared this with you before, but if I have, I'm sorry. But did I tell you about like when I was gardening and the weed stuff?
I don't recall.
So I was like gardening and we were pulling out all the weeds from our lawn, and I just had this like epiphany revelation from the Holy Spirit, and it was like these super like tall weeds were like very short rooted, and so I could just pull them out, right? And it was like no big deal. But the really low, like to the ground, stuck to the ground weeds that I was trying to get out, it was like I couldn't get them out. They would just break at the top without pulling out the root, right? And in that moment, I realized, like, I think this is me and a lot of people, like, that I minister to, right? It's like, yeah, I don't know how you feel about this, but it's so easy to say, hey, I'll pray for you when you're going through a hard time, right? And then we can, and then we just pull out these, like, very obvious problems in our lives, and then the roots come out and it's fine. But then, like, I don't think or in that time I felt like we are not addressing the real issue and the heart of the matter, and that is why the like very tall weeds keep growing, right? Like, we can't take out the rooted trauma or the thing that we really need healing from, and we're not addressing the problem in our churches, in our families, in our friendships, in our relationships. So I shared this revelation with my friend Lydia Yoon, and you know, thankfully she resonated with me. We talked it out, extroverted it a lot, and I realized, like, oh, like, me myself, if I don't take care of these low-laying weeds, I will never walk into the abundant life that God has called me to live, right? And I'm still working on it, but I think things like God's image or my family, and that question you asked me about, does that translate the way I live my life now? Because I've realized like a lot of things aren't mine, they're just God's. It has translated, but I wouldn't necessarily say because of God's image, it's because I've been addressing these really deeply rooted issues in my life. And it is not easy, especially when not everyone is on the same page as you, right? Like you can't really talk about it if people aren't ready to address these rooted issues together. But yeah, so it has translated, just not because of God's image, just because of like the healing that I've experienced through, I guess from my postpartum till now.
Yeah, because the part where you said you're giving it all to God, right? And you're just, God, you have to do everything.
Yes.
Like that sounds, and all Christians are familiar with that, right? Like Jesus take the wheel, like, but it's so difficult to do. It's not
so hard.
Yeah, it's not something you can just kind of do. You do have to really work at it. You have to be super intentional, and you have to self-correct so often, because no matter how much you say it, no matter how much you believe it, sometimes like you kind of look and you're like, oh wait, my hand's on the wheel again, so like I think like being able to do that with God's image, and then like being able to, like, for the hearers, right, even if you're not doing anything that's like a program or an event or a thing, like just like the simple things of life, like saying, God, you take it, and like, God, like just do this for me because I know that I can't do it of my own power. I think that is really like it does shift your perspective. One quick story is so Shirley, my wife Shirley, for whatever reason, she gets triggered by my older daughter a lot, Aisley. I think it's because their personalities are similar.
I was say it's because they're alike, probably.
And so like a couple of weeks ago, like one night, like Shirley and we had this long conversation. She was like, she even got to the point of like, I can't get pregnant because like if we have another baby and I have to deal with this, like I can't do that. So like she was very like, I honestly, I don't think she actually meant it. I think she was just kind of venting her frustration.
Of course, yeah.
But like, so we went through this whole conversation, and the day or like 2 days later, Aisley from school brings like this little like turkey with feathers, and she's written down what she's thankful for. And she's reading it. First is like, oh, Miss Spieth, like that's her teacher, like mommy and daddy, grandma and grandpa, and then in the corner, she wrote my God. So it wasn't just like God or like Jesus. It was like she wrote my God, and for for Shirley, it was like, oh, like it was a moment of realization. Like I'm stewarding this girl, and like I'm like, no matter how much I try to influence, and we're gonna do our best to raise her well and steer her the right way, but ultimately, even raising our kids, like we don't really have control over. And for like Shirley, reading that was just a reminder from God, like, oh, like God's kind of in control of this. Like God is the provider of Aisley's life. I'm not the one like who's molding her, right? God's molding her. So I wanted to kind of zero in on the whole letting go aspect of God's image, because there's just so much application, like in so many different parts of life that as Christians, like we can benefit from.
No, yeah, for sure. And I think even in preparing to like meet you tonight, I was like, I don't really know what to like, quote unquote, like promote about the organization and like talk about. But I had this feeling of like, I think what we'll probably end up talking about is this, right? Is like God's image is just a vehicle towards what, I think or not just a vehicle, another vehicle towards God's heart, right? And what he wants to see happen. And I had a wake up call, not just in letting things go, but also in just understanding that like the fear of the Lord is upon me. And if he's asking our family to do this, like how like what will I say when I die? Like, you know, like, I mean, I think that about our kids and our family and the people that we get to share life with at church too. But this one feels a little different, to be honest, right? Like, almost like the buck stops with me. Does that make sense? Wow. Like, and so it's like I had a freak out moment right before the concert, and I was like, oh my gosh, do we really want to do this? You know, but again, it was just, again, it's like, okay, I just release. It's not up to me. And if it doesn't work out, still praise God. You know, like, it's like, it wasn't my thing anyways. Right. And so I was just available. And I just very dumbly said yes. No, I'm just kidding. No. And
very obedient, I think is the word.
I appreciate that. But yeah, so you're right. There's a lot of things I've learned from like the 1 year of preparation and doing this, and really even realizing like thinking, not that I've lived some like very seasoned life or anything, but like thinking about all of my life experiences and ups, the very highs and the very lows in my life, and truly understanding that like, oh, God orchestrated everything. Like every person I've met, every like mother to child experience I've had, like even the parents that I work with today, right, through God's image too, like I can empathize, I can relate, I can understand, right? And even like I don't even, you mean, you kind of know my background, but it's like, you know, why am I children's pastor? I have no idea, right? Or why did David and I have so many spent years with youth students? I don't know. But it kind of feels like maybe it's for God's image, right? Like I literally, you know, our demographic is kindergarten through 12th grade. And David and I know how to interact and resonate with every age group at this point, right? I'm pretty sure God did all that. And to realize and kind of understand like, oh, like then nothing is in my control, you know, like letting all of that go. I think again, it's just this feeling of God, you are so good. And yeah, truly everything you have said and promised, like you always fulfill, starting with eternal life up until, you know, like, you know, everything else here on earth. And so yeah, I think again, God's image is just a vehicle and tool that I hope will edify our community and our region and our friends and our children. And yeah, there's so many things that I've witnessed. But am I constantly thinking about it? Yeah, of course. Like, sure. You know, like what are we gonna do next? How are we gonna do this? The technical stuff. And thankfully, I mean, I'm not just saying this to like gas up my husband, but I could not do it without David. Like, he is the best partner in all of this. And truly, like, the fact that we trust each other, I mean, not just as husband and wife, but as ministry partners, like, it really has been such a fun time for us. So yeah, it's been really great. No, sorry, awesome. I'm so emotional.
No, that's great. No, I mean, just kind of hearing all of it, there's so many parallels I can see with like like some of the stories in the Bible, like when you were talking about like the fear of the Lord because the
Mm-hmm.
buck stops with you,
Mm-hmm.
like, and like how nothing is really like, and then you were like, well, if it doesn't work out, it's not mine anyways.
Mm-hmm.
It really reminded me of the story of the talents.
Mm.
You know, like it's the servants were entrusted with the talents. It wasn't theirs, but the guy who like buried it away and did nothing with it,
Mm-hmm.
he was called like wicked servant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a real thing to
Yeah.
like have something that God's like giving to you, and you having to make the choice of like, am I going to bury it away or am
Yeah.
I going to do something with it? I think that's real.
Mm.
But I think the beautiful part of it is it really isn't yours. But when you do it well, like God blesses you,
Mm.
and God also enables you to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, just how truly like unnecessary we are, yet how much God desires us to be a part of it. I think just says everything about who He is.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yes, you said it perfectly.
So tell me a little bit about kind of, well, what is your heart like, well, as a vehicle
Yes,
to
yes.
for God's image to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, bring glory to God, get people closer to God? Like, what do you envision and what do you hope for, pray for will happen to the students who are participating?
Yeah, there's okay. A couple things. And what's really cool is doing this while being a parent, it hits closer to home.
Sure.
So I think, okay, the first thing obviously is that our students would come to know who Jesus is at an early age, right? And I think a lot of that can happen through Christ-centered fellowship, right? Especially with this generation. I think that that's something I'd like to see happen. I think also just building a culture of worship for Jesus that doesn't just stop at God's image, but like ultimately, right? Like if you think about it, like if they're practicing at home, like it's bringing worship into the house. I can't speak for anybody else's children at this moment, but like Eli and Zoe constantly singing God's image songs, right? Like constantly. And so without them even realizing it, not that we're brainwashing them, but it's just, it's just like it's a habit that they're building in their own lives, that I pray will carry onto their local church, right? Like if there are students that are excited about worshiping Christ, that they will bring that same energy and that same hunger and excitement to their children's ministries or to their youth groups, and that it would just be contagious, right? Like I mean, I think people that know me know that I have no desire to like replace. We're not a para church ministry. Like I really want to come in partnership with churches and youth pastors and children's ministers that, we need each other to do this. And so I said it at the concert, like, it's not a call to God's image, right? It's a call to unity, like that I was talking about at the very beginning of our conversation, right? It's like, why we can't do Camp All Asian American at a church because we are broken and so human, we cannot help ourselves, and it'll be about that church. But when I feel like God said it's God's image, it's because I think all of us can agree on the future of our kids, and we all want what's best for them.
Yeah.
We won't fight on behalf of them, right? We won't like create drama or anything because it's about them. And so I think truly, like, that's what I would like to see happen through God's image, through our kids, right? It doesn't have to be us. It is, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a parent aspect too that I'd love to see happen. The culture of families, like just, serving together, like from other churches, but together here, and then continuing to serve that same vibes at their own local churches would be beautiful to watch. And then I think definitely, so there is we're just in our second month here in Atlanta, but, across other branches, what was really beautiful to witness when I went to go to LA and was like, there is a structure of like leadership. So like this whole like teaching model, there's like TAs too. And like, I think the way that they kind of go through that process, it without them even realizing it, it really is equipping them in leadership, in teaching, in working with other younger students, in giving them a voice in a public space. And I think even those kinds of like social interactions is really important, and how great if we can do that in an environment that is God-centered and healthy, so that they can go out and do the same things, right? Like in the business world, in the engineering world, and whatever that looks like. And so basically it's like when I grow up, and then like I'm just doing it the way yeah. So I think those are just kind of the main things.
Yeah. I have a very hot take, probably an unpopular opinion, but parents who do like sports
Yes.
for kids. Sports, there's nothing wrong with sports, but I do think it is like there is something where, so I think you were kind of alluding to this a little bit, but there's this notion that when we're teaching our kids life skills or whatever, like social skills, it's just teaching them. But when it's like about faith, it's like indoctrination, right? Or brainwashing.
I see. Yeah.
And when we do these like really intensive sports programs and things like that, there is an imprint, right? Where they're having a great time. They're making friendships that I don't know will last a long time. They're learning a lot of things, and I always there's a part of me thought that thinks like there's a subset of parents. And I think I was included in this at a certain point, where we're doing a disservice to our kids because we take the whole like indoctrination accusation too seriously. And so there are some people comments online, people say stuff like, I'm not going to teach my kids about faith until they're old enough to decide for themselves.
Sure.
And it seems like logical and noble and all that, but I really think about it and I'm like, man, like think about all the experiences they're missing out on, like all the ways that like all the childhood memories that they could be acquiring and getting. You're gonna withhold that from them because you think that that's not the right way to do it. Like, faith is like if you're like serious, right? Faith is the most important thing in your life, right? Your relationship with God, and to for whatever reason leave that till later. It doesn't make sense to me. And then also to only allow like those like sports teams or like music or all those other things to have like fill that hole in their childhood, like it's like weird to me. So like the things that you were saying about God's image, like every Saturday, like you're creating relationships with people in your class, with your teachers. It's all God centered. Like some of those like policies we were talking about,
Yes.
like no intra dating and things like that. So like you're like really there intentionally, not with any other like, because let's face it, like especially in our generation, I think there were a lot of our peers who went to church to like meet people and like
Yes.
date around and things like that, right? So like to have a space where parents can rest assured that no, like that kind of stuff won't be like that. We're discouraging all that, and where they can have like develop childhood memories of worshiping God together in a really like I would be remiss if I didn't mention in a very professional way. Like when I went to the concert, like it was great, right? Because they're like even like the facial expressions of all the like students, like it was very like, oh, like even that's a part of the worship, you know. It's not like a shabby just whatever thrown together like
That's right.
production. It's like really well done. So like to have those kind of memories, like it doesn't come easily, right? It takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So having those types of bonds, memories, and all of that is centered on Christ, and like our kids get to grow up with that. Like, why wouldn't you want your kids to be a part of that? You know, like why would we continue to just only allow like travel baseball and stuff like that to dominate that space? So all that to say, I think God's image is like, it sounds great, right?
Yes.
It sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, you know, so far I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and I'm really blown away. I mean, I shouldn't be blown away, but I am, and I'm so encouraged, and but it is very clear to me that God has prepared a lot of parents and students like for this thing. Like, it's almost like they didn't know what they were being prepared for, but like just the engagement and their willingness to like be a part of it and participate and even just help me too, like is very humbling, eye-opening, because yeah, and I think like, you know, God's image offers something like, hopefully I'm filling a hole maybe that churches can't. And so again, David and I, my husband, we serve at a church and work at a local church here in Atlanta, and have been doing it for some time. So while I've been doing God's image, I have questioned like, so why can't we do this at church? Right? Like, why like this culture that I would like to see happen and develop with the next generation, and the culture that I foresee happening through God's image, like why does it need to be God's image? Right? But I think it does. Like, I think David and I, my husband, we kind of processed it a little bit together, and he helps me kind of think through those things, and because I get so like emotional about things, and it helps that he's more logical than I am. Oh gosh, I can't even remember what he said, but I think one of the reasons is like, there are just a lot of things that the church is expected to do. And so I think, you know, having a place of like focus, right? And like, again, being a dance, being the vehicle for bringing people together is very interesting. And I think that it is... I don't know what I'm trying to say. Sorry. I lost my train of thought, but
I think like it does make sense that there are things the church can do, and there are also other things that an outside of church organization can also do.
Oh, yes. Oh, sorry, yes. And so you know, I think when parents come and they are eager for their students to participate, but the student needs to know that they need to be engaged as well, but and the students want to be there, right? Like, it's a different experience that can really cultivate a heart of worship for the Lord that maybe not all churches are equipped to do that, right? And again, this is not like I feel like God's image is not some like revolutionary thing, right? Like there are Caucasian mega churches here that have similar concepts and ministries within their churches, but I think God's image can offer something a little bit different. in the Asian American context. I forgot to mention that. It's not, obviously we don't like exclude people or anything like that, but I think, the fact that, David and I are Korean and I'm American, and it matters.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the same reason, when I grew up, I only interviewed Asian Americans. It's weird. I didn't even know I had this kind of heart until I started doing When I Grew Up, and started having children.
Yeah.
But it does matter.
Yeah.
It does matter. Yeah.
I remember there was I forget what event it was. It was probably one of those like joint church things in the past that we did. But there was a pastor who made the observation, like, if you close your eyes and you enter a church, a Caucasian church, you can say, oh, this is a Caucasian church, like during worship. You close your eyes and you go to a black church. Oh, like, this is definitely a black church. You close your eyes and you go to Asian American church. You kind of think, is this a Caucasian church? Or is this, like, there's no, like, distinct characteristic of an Asian American church. Because so much of what we do is modeled after the...
Interesting.
Yeah. So, to me, I mean, honestly, I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing.
I don't know either.
Yeah, I don't really have an opinion about it. But it is interesting that, as of yet, there isn't really a observably distinct characteristic of the Asian American church, at least from the worship part of it. So all that to say, I think it does matter, right? Like, kind of like you saying that, I think it does matter. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know if I have a formed opinion of if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But I will say though that there is a reason why, like Korean Americans, like we gravitate towards Korean American churches.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I don't know why either.
Yeah.
I stopped thinking about it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so this is so random.
No, please.
So like after I listened to the most recent podcast, you guys talked about the podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill.
Oh yeah.
So I started listening to it.
Yeah.
I'm not very far along, but like, I am so naive.
Interesting.
And I'm like, if you haven't listened to it, I don't know if you should listen to it, but but I was like, and I'm not that far either, so maybe I need to like listen to the whole thing. I mean, and I listened to it because, Mark Driscoll during our college years was the pastor, and all of a sudden disappeared, and I didn't take time to like find out why. I just knew like there were like bad things and rumors, and then I just listened to the podcast and I was like, huh. But even just the like, I think episode 2 or 3 is about just even the rise of the mega church in general, and I was like, this is wild.
Yeah.
I'm not okay. Like, like just being the feeler that I am and not a big like logical thinker. I know you are, my husband is, and other people I know are, but I'm not pragmatic. Oh, Edward's son is also pragmatic.
He's actually the most recent episode.
Oh yes, I'm sorry.
You're referring to 2 episodes ago.
Oh yes. Yeah. 2 episodes ago. But anyways, all that to say, like just churches in general, like after like literally listening to it, I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My experience with it is even wilder because, Mark Driscoll, like it pastor, like he fell off. So and then I listened to the whole episode. I mean, the whole podcast.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I finished the podcast that I learned and realized that Mark Driscoll is a pastor again.
Yes.
He's pastoring a church
in Arizona.
And he's making content. Yes. So like he pops up on my feed and stuff like that. So it's like, to me, like I'm trying to be as fair as I can to Mark Driscoll, like trying to marry or at least take in his perspective that he kind of talks about and the perspective of what happened, like what the story of what the podcast kind of presents. So all of that, it's like really fascinating to me. Like, I want to just be like, oh, Mark Driscoll was a terrible guy. Or I want to be like, no, this podcast got it wrong. He's a great guy. He's a great teacher. But like, I can't go to either of those places.
Right.
I'm like kind of like going back and forth through it.
Yeah.
And I think I'm realizing, oh, that's the nature of humanity.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And that's why I'm like, people don't listen to it if you're like me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, this is why. It's, for me, sometimes ignorance is bliss, and I'm okay with it. But anyways.
And I listened to like the first 3 episodes of a podcast that Carl Lentz did.
I refuse to listen to it.
No, but like even that too, I'm like, well, of course. I mean, like every podcast, like even this one, like you kind of develop the narrative, right? So like obviously that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
And but like there are episodes with like his wife and his kids and things like that, and there are parts of me that are like, oh, like it's crazy that the aftermath impacted his family like in such a big way. So like I kind of like sympathize with the family, and like it does sound like Carl Lentz is like he is repenting. Like I don't think I would like if he like started ministry again. I think I would be like, oh, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
But like as a human being, like him, like kind of like repenting and like trying to, you know, like work on his marriage again and stuff like that. Like those stories, like again, like fascinate me because I want like it would have been so much easier for me to just be like, Carl Lentz, that like really douchey like quote unquote celebrity pastor. Like of course he fell. Like of course he was doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then like, I don't know. There is something about like the way that we discern like how much of a return a fallen pastor can make, right? Like it's hard, like because there's the standard of grace isn't the same, and I think that's the way it should be, right? Because they're teachers, and the way that like the impact they can have is far more far-reaching than like a normal person. So I think that's right, but it's just I'm personally trying to find the right balance of how much grace do these people deserve, just at a human level, not like as a pastor or a like a teacher. Because I had the conversation with my wife Shirley, and she's kind of like you, like, what? Why are you even listening to that? Why are you giving that guy why are you like allowing him to like tell his side? He's obviously in the wrong, and yeah, of course, like what he did was wrong. He cheated on his wife, and like I mean, just the way that he was presenting a lot. I mean, there was a lot of teachings that he did even that I didn't agree with, but yeah, it's fascinating to see and finally kind of understand how complex we all are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny that you listened to it. I wanted to listen to it, but then I also didn't want to. I didn't want to hear what he had to say, you know? But as far as like, you know, I've been through my fair shares of, not fair share, that's a wrong word to use.
That's right. No, yeah.
Of hurt from, you know, those kinds of brokenness and addiction, right?
Yeah.
It's weird, right? Like how some things weigh more than others. But it's like it doesn't in the eyes of God. So then it makes you think more about the grace part, right?
Yeah.
It's like how much, you know? But he says all, like everything. And it's all the same. But what's helped me a lot in showing grace to people, in like what does it look like to like really really forgive somebody, is like having children.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
Yeah, and like I don't know how you see it, and I don't even know, probably my way is kind of twisted too, but like essentially like you know, how much my son will mess up, my daughter will mess up. Like, I would want the person that they, you know, did something towards or offended or something to show them understanding, forgiveness, and grace, knowing like that, you know, they were raised in, you know, like in a household that loves the Lord, and they understand, you know, right from wrong, but they still always make mistakes. And so, like, when I see someone and they offend me and I'm like, that's unforgivable, I'm like, oh, this person is someone's child, you know, and like, if it were Eli, like,
Right.
what would I do?
Right.
Or how would I feel? And it's still hard,
Sure.
but it's interesting, yeah.
The way that I contextualize it is like, and I think you said, you know, have kids and it helps, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it might be different, but...
No. I would even say like kids plural helps a lot because like my kids fight with each other,
So
and
much.
and then when one of them offends the other, like my heart isn't to just right the wrong. My heart is, I know you've been wronged, and I'm glad that you know right from wrong, but this is my child too. Like and you guys are brothers, and you guys are sisters, you know.
Yes.
So like my hope is that you can see beyond the mistake of your sibling and like understand my heart in the love that I have for both of you. I don't want to
Yes.
minimize your hurt because I know you've been wronged, but I also don't want to see this other child of mine be ostracized and just being cast out because of the mistake that they made. And so like I bring it to that place a lot. Like
Yeah.
when somebody's wronged me, like because like I always go back to, man, if like Kaylin did this to Aisley, like, and I'm Aisley, like, yeah, of course I would be upset, but like
That's good.
the moment after, like I would want my kids to reconcile.
Yeah, and they always do.
Yeah.
They're so great kids. They
Yeah.
always do. Yeah.
But I mean, but I do think though, obviously we have guardrails, right? Like with like someone who sins, who's just a layperson, like it's very different from somebody who like really sins as a pastor. Like there's
Yeah.
huge implications,
Yeah.
you know. So we're not discounting any of that.
No,
but
no, of course
I
not.
think the relationship part of it, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how have you been doing with because we talked a little bit about the postpartum and like how you felt like you haven't really like fully been restored from it. Do you feel like you're there now?
I do
or-
feel a ton better. Like, I feel like clear eyes, clear mind. And, you know, I don't want to... I still always feel weird talking about it, to be honest. Because, like, I don't want to give it too much, like, weight. But I also don't want to dismiss it, right? And I think it's a very real thing. Like, hormonally and, like, just physically, all the changes that a woman goes through. Like, literally carrying a human inside of you for 9 months. Like, all those things, like, so many things that I don't realize are... like not to be taken lightly, you know, and I think a lot of people do. And but yeah, all that to say, I do feel completely different than I did, you know, than I did during that time. And I think there's a lot of things, like, right, like my kids are older, I have a little more time to myself than I did before. So there are a lot of things that contribute to my mental health. But I think that right now, I think what I went through was very real. It wasn't like a like just some sort of freak out postpartum look at me kind of thing. It really was like mentally, physically, spiritually, just so draining for me. And again, everybody is so different and they handle it differently. I think when you have a support system, that's also different. Not to say our families were not supportive. It's just they weren't physically here, you know, and not being able to have that like space to like think is really hard on moms and dads. And then, you know, David was really young when we had Eli.
How old was he?
He's
in his 20s for sure, right?
He's like 24.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
That is super young.
Yeah. And so, and he was just like figuring out how to be a husband and a dad and so many other things. And, again, it was just, I think support system is really important looking back on things. And, I do think even though we had social media, like the community was not what it is today too. And I bring it up because I think there is a lot of solidarity for moms through social media these days. But I think maybe it was starting when we had Eli and Zoe. But even then, like, it wasn't the same. And but you know, I think about my friends now that are having kids and are like our new moms and how well they're doing. And I'm so like grateful and I'm so thankful. I mean, of course they share the struggles and we can commiserate together. But I do ask myself like, oh, should I have done it differently? Do I regret not enjoying Eli and Zoe like everyone told me I should? You know, like, I think I enjoyed them, but I also was like in a hurry. But now like Eli's 8 and Zoe's 6 and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know, like, what are we gonna do? They're growing so fast, but I think that I don't regret it. I think everything happens for a reason. However, I do think, you know, I wish I had enjoyed it a little bit more. And so when I reflect on that, I ask myself why I didn't. I do think personality contributes a lot. Like, and it may sound like justification for like me justifying like why I couldn't like really enjoy that time. But, you know, if I compare my personality with somebody else's that's like really doing their best to embrace like the baby years, I still think I wouldn't have been content. Like just me being me, right? And the way that I'm wired. And again, this is all like new stuff that I've processed a little bit in the last couple months. But like, because like even the podcast was me like desiring something more, right? Like, and like my kids are the next generation, but for whatever reason, it wasn't enough. And I don't know why. So I like did what I could, right? And I said, okay, I'm just going to do a podcast then. But then like, I would argue that like my friends that are embracing, in my view, in my eyes, from my perspective, like embracing the baby years a little bit better than I did or could. I also don't think they would start a podcast. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like, I think it's just like, yeah, personality, it contributes a lot to how you handle those years as well. Is what I've been thinking about lately. Because I'm like, why can't I stay still? Like, why do I have to do, you know, like, why do I have to do GI? Why do I have to do all these things? And, but like, I am super content in what the Lord has called me to do and our family to do. And, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure all of this, like, I think one really cool thing about the podcast is, like, years from now when my kids are old enough to, like, I guess, appreciate conversations like this. they can go back and like it'll be like a time capsule for them.
For sure.
Oh, this is what my dad was like before. Like for me, I think I started before even Aisley was born.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You did.
So-
On your phone. I remember that.
Yeah. So like she gets to see a little bit of me before like she was even born, and like Eli and Zoe, they're gonna be able to go back and like this was what mom was like. This was like what her heart was like at the time, and like all the stuff that you're doing too. Like I think it's part of their childhood.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And you know like something that Shirley and I tell each other. And this is like. I'm not gonna say the actual thing. So.
Okay.
So it was kind of like, you know, if the cavemen could raise their kids and like we as a species survived, like there's only so far we can mess up. You know what I mean? Like as parents, like kids are so resilient, and yeah, it's just I think it's such a waste of time. For parents listening, it's such a waste of time to like think back and say like, should I have done this better or should I have done that better? Because like we don't know if that thing that you would have done better would have resulted in something better. Do you know the story of this is like a Chinese proverb or something?
Okay.
Actually, I don't even know if this is Chinese or not. But there's the story of a guy who has like horses,
Okay.
and like one day like a storm came and broke all the fences, so all the horses ran away. And his neighbors were like, oh, bad luck, huh? And then the guy was like, no, I don't know yet. And then the day after, like his 7 horses that left came back. There were 9 of them. They had found some strays and they all came back together. And then the neighbor again was like, oh, 2 more horses, that's good luck. And it's like, I don't know yet. And then so like it kind of keeps going, like bad things happen, good things happen. Like his I'll tell a couple more steps. Like his son is trying to tame one of the wild horses, and then he breaks his leg because he gets like, and then the neighbor's like, oh, bad luck, huh? He's like, I don't know yet. The day after, a conscription notice. The country is going to war. All able-bodied men have to go to war now. His son doesn't have to go to war. It's like, oh, that's good luck, huh? He's like, I don't know yet. Right. So like the idea being, like the good thing that happens today, you don't know if it's going to result in something bad, or if the bad thing that happens today will result in something good.
Yeah.
And that's why like kind of going back to your like letting go and asking God to kind of just take on stuff, take it all. I think that's really the only way that we can live while retaining our sanity.
Yeah.
Because like trying to like map like our life, like going back and like, you know, I actually did this a lot. For those of you guys who followed like the memes, like stocks, like the GameStop, and
yes.
Do you remember that?
Of course I remember that. Shirley and David were like going crazy.
I remember the exact moment, like where I was, what we were doing, before Elon Musk like tweeted about it and launched the price up. And I'm like, only like I wonder if like I went back in that time and then like bought GameStop, or like I remember when Bitcoin was like $1,000.
Yeah.
I remember this because this was when I was buying an engagement ring for Shirley, and I think somebody made the comment because like engagement rings are expensive. They were like, "Oh, you should just buy Bitcoin with that," you know. And I was like, "Why would I do that?" You know, if I did that, I would be like a millionaire. You know, like
shoulda, coulda.
Yeah. So like I think back to all those moments. And it's like it's maddening to think of the what ifs. Yeah. And like how can I prepare myself to do better next time? Like all those things are just like, I'm so grateful that God says just leave it all up to me.
Yes.
Because it's like I can't do this by myself. And so I say all this as an encouragement. You know, like I see Eli and Zoe, and like they're such happy, great kids.
Most of the time, yes.
Yeah, that's my response to everyone that says the same about Aisley and Caitlin. But I mean, no, like they're in a loving family. They're being fed every day. You know, like there are things as parents we can do better. Like no one's perfect, but for them, I don't think they see any of that. They're gonna look back and only see like the good times. Like I don't remember any of the decisions that my parents made that I'm like, oh, you should have done this and my childhood would have been better. Like, I don't think about those kind of things, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, yeah, as parents, let's encourage each other, you know?
Yeah.
We're doing a good job.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. No, for sure. And I'm so glad that we are all in this season of life together. It's really beautiful and such a gift that I didn't even know I needed, you know? Like, again, we don't think about it when we're younger, but it's funny, like, sorry, are we short on time?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to mention, as you were talking, even about the proverb that you were just sharing from whatever country it's from, it reminded me of, so an element of God's image classes on Saturday is that I try to schedule in at least 10 to 15 minutes of what we just call care group or like sharing time. So the last, we've only met like maybe like 5 Saturdays now. And so during this time, I've just been sharing from God's word and kind of just going after and sending a culture of what God's image is, right? And so part of that has been me talking about like worship, and right now the younger teams are memorizing Psalm 100, and the first one is shout for joy to the Lord, all of the earth, right? And so that's verse 1. And so, but then we started digging into like, okay, the command of God from this psalm is to shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. And it doesn't say like shout only when you're like happy. It says, or shout just like one time a day, it just says shout. But then we start talking about like what joy really is and what it looks like. And you're talking about like just trusting God, and we don't really know what's going to happen, and we don't know how today's heartache is going to turn into tomorrow's celebration. And so it's, again, like, I'm sure raising Kaylin and Aisley, like, kids are very smart. If you just talk to them, they're very intelligent and they can grasp concepts very quickly if you take the time to explain them, right? And so to my younger classes, we're talking about what is this joy that God is telling us to like shout to all the earth, right? Like, what does this mean? Like, what? So we start talking about what makes you joyful, quote unquote, right? But all these things that they're naming is like, these are just like happiness things, right? It's not like the joy that comes from Christ that we have grown to know, right? And also, I would argue this joy doesn't happen overnight for a lot of us. For some people, it does. I think for me, it didn't, right? But anyways, just kind of breaking these things down in the short amount of time we have on a Saturday. But most recently, with my 3rd through 6th graders, I was like, okay, like, so what if all the happiness was taken away? Like, what if like games, friends, people, I said K-pop stars make them happy, like what if like everything was just taken away? Like, would you be joyful? And they're like, no, like, that's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So then, like, why does God say shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth, right? Like, what is he really saying? And he's like, and so we got to the point of like, it means like to trust the Lord, right? When we trust God with all of the things, like, that is where true joy begins to sprout, right? Begins to grow. So then I said, okay, then what areas of our life is it challenging to trust God?
Wow. Oh, that's deep.
And so we start talking about it. Reputation, what our friends think about us, body image, even just in the class. Like I have like this like acronym where we're like supposed to set the culture of GI, and one of them is like encourage, right? So I'm like, we're not going to tear people down. So even in the classroom, I would imagine some people are not as quick to learn dances as the others, right? But we're not going to be the person that's like, oh, I suck, right? We're going to be like, okay, and then another part of the acronym is ask. So it's like, okay, then we're going to ask each other. We're gonna help each other, right? And it's hard. They probably hate that I ask them every week what the acronym is, but I was like, you guys are gonna, know this. But, what I'm getting to is one of the students said, it's really hard to trust God when I pray and he doesn't answer the way that I want him to. It's a third grader. Okay. I'll just tell the listeners because I'm so proud of her. It was Elizabeth's song.
Wow.
Right. And so I'm writing it on the board and like, it's just like overwhelming me. Right. And I'm like, that's it. That's right. That's it right there. And so we start talking about that more. So, and then, a lot of my students at GI, they're all churched. Like they all grew up in church, most of them. And I think all of them. And so I can refer back to Old Testament Bible stories and they know what I'm talking about. So I refer back to like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? When they refuse to worship King Nebuchadnezzar, so they get thrown into the fiery furnace. So I asked them, do you think these three friends didn't pray that God would save them from the fire? And then they were like, no, they definitely prayed that God would save them from the fire. Like, I'm like, right. So as they're walking into the fire, do you think they thought like, maybe we don't know, right? But they may have thought, why didn't God save me from the fire? Yeah. Right? And then like they get in the fire and the most miraculous thing happens, right? And God shows up inside of the fire, right? And saves them at the most, like at the moment where people that don't know the Lord will know that God is real. So like, yes, it's hard to trust God when he doesn't answer the prayer that we want him to answer the way that we want him to. We just don't know. But God does, right? And so like that is where the joy comes from. So the proverb that you were sharing earlier, it reminded me of that, right? It's like we just don't know what God is going to do. But that's where the joy comes from. And these are the types of things that like I hope that the next generation will learn at an early age, right? And they seems like they are. Like a lot of them, they're very self-aware, and I'm great. And then I'm like, oh, see, like our generation is doing great, like us parents, like we are doing our best, and it's like so hard, and like we're so human though, and in like the brokenness of all of it, and it's like so it's so hard to be a parent, but we just need to let down our pride and help each other, right? Yeah. And that's what I want for our students too. Like, there is no reason for you to feel like you can't ask for help. But a lot of them do. And so that's part of the acronym, right? So the first one is P, which is praise, right? Obviously, praise God. E is encourage. So that means encouraging each other, building up the body of Christ, not tearing each other down. Each verse has each letter has a word and a verse that goes along with it. But, and then A is ask. So we just ask each other for help, ask God, obviously, for help. And then we talk about too, and I share with them like, hey, even like asking your parents, right? Yeah. For help, or even like, if you feel sad or happy or something, like it's okay to ask your family or your sibling or your church member, like let's set that culture now. And then the acronym is PAIR. So like, and the R is respect. And so respecting, okay, I know it sounds crazy, but like I get so annoyed and frustrated when I see young people not saying hello. So I tell them, like, if you see a person and they look like they speak Korean or they're older than you, it's okay to just like insa. Yeah. Just insa. Yeah. It's okay. If you don't know them, it's okay. Yeah. And then if they're not a Korean speaker or you don't speak Korean, just say hi. Like, you know, like that's being kind and respectful. Like this is what it means to bear the image of God, right? And so like, and then like respecting your space, right? Like if you see a tissue on the floor in the bathroom, pick it up.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay if no one saw you pick it up. You can come tell me. Come tell me you picked it up. And I will be so excited for you. But yeah, these are the kinds of things that like we're just like implementing in the culture of what Atlanta GI is, and all the other branches have similar things. They don't have acronyms, I don't think, but it's just.
Did you come up with it?
I did.
Wow.
No, it's not wow. It's like just a lot of life experiences and like educational stuff that I'm like, we need to do this. Like, yeah. But
And I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, they're gonna pick up stuff. Like, our kids are gonna pick up culture. So if they're gonna pick up culture anyways, like, don't you want to make sure that it's good culture?
yes.
You know, like
Yes.
there is. I have another hot take.
Love the hot takes.
Like, I'm not super into like the like really competitive sports.
Oh, I think I knew that about you.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this, and like specifically in the like church context. And so like when churches do like these like competitive sports events, I think it's great. No, like 99% great, because it's like there's a lot of fellowship that happens. You go outdoors, you meet people, and all that kind of stuff. But like the 1% hesitation I have is, are we teaching people that like competition and being better than other people is the main goal? Because all like when you're like playing basketball, right? Like when we were younger, there were like basketball tourneys all over, right?
Yes.
Like, what exactly is the culture being cultivated there? Because from my vantage point, like I never like played in those, but from like what I'm seeing, it's we're cultivating a lot of pride. We're cultivating a lot of like, I need to win, like I need to be better than you kind of thing. And so, but you know, again, there's a lot of like good things about those things as well. But if you're completely removed from the church context and you're doing those competitive sports outside, like, yeah, like be the best that you can, be number one, do all that you can to win, which I think on the surface sound like really great things to instill in kids, like to teach them to do their best, which is obviously good. But there is a part where like if you leave out like the encouraging each other, the like asking for help, you know, the like being respectful to one another, like are those things really being taught in those contexts? I don't think so, because it's not their job to teach those things, right? It's not their job to have that be part of their culture. So anywhere we can cultivate those things, those good godly things, and instill them in our kids at an early age, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
Important.
yeah, I think if there are people listening who have kids from the ages of, is it kindergarten?
Yeah, 5 years old
5 to
12th grade.
Yeah, so 5 until they're no longer your problem.
Yes.
So if they wanted to be part of GI, what would they need to do?
Yeah, so I am closing registration the first week of January. And the reason for that is because of the amount of dancing that they have to do and the dances they have to learn. And then we do have like annual concerts. And so, but if you wanted to register, it would be tinyurl.com/ATL God's Image. And then you would just register there and we would contact you after that.
So then if they missed the deadline for the first week, is the first week of January, is there something they can like do again next year? Is there
Yeah,
a window that
so
opens?
there will be so this is like just our first season, our first year, and then we will do another registration starting in the fall. Probably this is another weakness I'm learning to grow, but it's like I'm so bad at like vision casting, you know, like planning. I'm just like a kind of let's get the done now stuff. But anyway, so yeah, fall, and I'm predicting probably the new semester or the new season will start at the end of September.
Got it. Perfect. So
Yeah.
guys, you guys know Blair. If you don't know her, go listen to the podcast. Get to know her, and you just know. Like for those of you who know you, like they know your heart, and yeah, like she's a person that you can feel safe, like kind of entrusting your kids to, and also David too. And David, you say that he's young. He was young when he had Eli.
Yeah.
But he's an old soul. So like he's very mature for his age.
He is.
So yeah, these guys like really great people with great hearts. So I fully endorse it. So if you guys have kids and want to, you guys have a little window open around the month. So get on that. But if you don't make that window, there's always next fall. So yeah, Blair, thanks so much for coming. I'm so happy that we got to cover all those topics.
So I felt like it was a little scattered. I'm sorry. As a podcast host myself, I'm like, oh, I don't know if that.
No, I think this is great because it's not just a story about like it's easy enough to talk about what God's image does, but I think what this podcast provides is the heart behind the person running God's image, which is a big deal. Like like the program can be changed, but if you understand the heart of the person running it, then you kind of at least know what you're getting into. So, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. It's always like such a pleasure, so much fun, and thank you for all the kind words you just said. I mean, I always, our families are. It's so funny how we're connected. I feel like, and yeah, I'm just so grateful for both you and Shirley. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you guys for listening. Again, if you have any questions about God's image, I'll have all the links and stuff on the podcast episode details, or also on Instagram as well. So please make sure to check those out. And again, thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, David. Bye.